Come on, let's go. Unwrap her like a bow, head down by the feet is death pose, you know. 18 are the subordinates below, Sirach, mentioned in the Grimorium Verum. Clownek, Musisin, Bukaud, Frehmast, Klepath, Kill, Merfilde, Klisteret, Circade, Segal, Hickpacketh, Famants, Fricasere, Galand, Sergat, Morel, Fruitemir, and Huictigaris are each as distinct hums. Huic te garas is what I should have said. So I have a whole series of things to comment on before moving on. Pearls from the Quran, Ramadan 2017, Katiras. That's not a proper plural in Arabic. How do you say Katira in a plural? Part 7, the prayer. The prayer. Allah was not the thing mistaken from the fire, but his presence was there. Almost every path has lost out on the ritual prayers in favor of voluntary rituals and mere superstitions. Following the letter of religious prescriptions is how we reach upon to the spirit of the law. How to interpret the Bible plus book recommendations. It should be less about being part of a church and more about being authentic in one's own convictions about the sources. Prosaic reading of sacred scripture and other texts was common and established long before the Enlightenment. Those who say it was all Hermetic are wrong from a historical perspective too. A scholar who doesn't look at what other scholarship and lay people have to interpret and practice religion is either just arrogant or working priestcraft or statecraft. Contradictions with itself and statements that are literally against reality are not things that should be considered just style. If you can't trust the plain side of a text, looking for truth in alternative interpretation borders on mental illness. Not practicing or dismissing unpopular or difficult passages is generally out of liberal laziness. Sin isn't on one person unless they are victimizing. Pornography comes from the Greek word for any sex act outside of marriage. Inner or out of course, by the way. Prisons breed problems instead of fixing them. Retributive justice and corporal punishment done publicly still prevents crime. A person doesn't have to accept or even look at conservatism to make things work spiritually. It can help to consider current and past interpretation, but shopping around for what pleases instead of what works best in understanding and experience is probably the wrong approach. The Greek Bible text that most can access if they want were written after the founding of the Catholic Church in the 2nd century of the Common Era. If you can't trust the Catholics, don't trust the Bibles derived from others. That was something that I commented on before. Before that woman became Catholic. Ice cube tray freezer spell to shut up or shut down a troublemaker's mouth. Black Witch Coven video, probably. People shouldn't get weird over eating various parts of a clean animal and other than hot dogs and hamburgers. I mean, if we can grind it up for a hot dog and hamburger, what's wrong with eating it? I never feel like I need to use anything other than the materials that seem to be at hand in sympathetic magic. I do, however, try to have a variety of symbolic elements. I think all should personalize incantations or do more than prescribed with traditional material. The destruction of the name was done by anything from pottery to grass and bark in various parts of the world, and by like the Goetia rituals, I would consume the symbol as both a transformation and an absorption. My Goetia con that I'm going to try to live capture on a video, I don't plan to eat a symbolic meal with that. I might figure out how to make that possible, but how to win people's approval, alter spiritual life, episode 60. Because being a complete sociopath is the key to popularity. Joke about this thing. Ego quitting, becoming a living god. Morality, summoning extraterrestrials, Whitley Strieber. End of Days, number 38. I haven't seen any indication that anyone ever opposed Eric Arcalis quitting out of jealousy, or the competition he posed. People have to learn how to distinguish pareidolia from real patterns and conveyed meanings. The Maya vision serpent. Cutting is supposed to call for piercing the genitals. Miasma, or psychosomatic self-harm, is a sign something is wrong in ritual. My current video presentation series, when I was making that, I have shared one of those weird light in the room experiences. Fast and testimony meetings in the Latter-day Saint services were not as real conviction-based as those practices could be. Just like the opposed sustained thing, it's an engineered feeling, an engineered experience. But it's not like Pentecostals and Baptists and stuff don't engineer people feeling to the point where they might decide, oh, I'm going to testify. A person, and testify in a very specific way, a person does not have to give up on this life in order to make the best physical and spiritual use of this life, which is a learning experience full of opportunities. It just doesn't make sense to assume that people would automatically move to a better place if there is an afterlife. Lucifer is supposed to be something we are or can be, instead of some demon we serve. Okay. And I guess part 9, dialogue with Curtis Joseph. Shayateen min al jinn are not forces of nature, but they are a lot of what people deem to be gods and goddesses. To actively worship and admit the worship of some purely spiritual being is not to lose power, but to be in turn with its power. The jinn are not controlled by the magic, but it is ourselves that we are to have under control. What we worship may be pleased at us, and even the non-human devils would deny the idea of life being a game. The terms are important in understanding what mythology is saying about existence. Part 8, dialogue with Curtis Joseph. Spirituality is mind control, but your chosen and determined own path is to banish unwitting external control. We interact with the spiritual realms to cause changes with what goes on in this material world, but life is not just wish fulfillment, and neither is any afterlife. Dialogue with Curtis Joseph. The simplified method many of us have seen become a living God people perform rituals in is to make a symbol, remember a name, and say whatever you can think that can relate. The important things with timing have to do with the tradition and the watches of the day. Sunrise to sunset as 12 hours, and the other 12 as however long sunset to sunrise is. Night before the day first, of course, in your planetary hour series. Evening and between dusk and dawn are generally the best times to do dark grimoire-like work. Whenever I hear a physical manifestation from a ritual, it is almost always psychic, as closest to physical, and the awareness of evoking is usually one of the practitioners and witnesses of the ritual only. Part 12, Dialogue with Curtis Joseph. Sigilia are often actual records of spiritual experiences, the internet being like an imitation of the jeweled net of the King of Heaven. I agree that http sigilscribe.me is an interesting site to consider using, but it'll be more effective on the feelings, emotions, intellect, and intuition to work out the reductions of words and the number values of those into grids. Part 11, Dialogue with Curtis Joseph. The most powerful evil magic is obviously that which is the meaning and the symbolic that the jinn have put together or even inspired themselves. One can actually evoke and invoke several times a day and night, producing drug-like highs that increase ability. Ritual takes energy, and we are left with certain limitations, but it tends to be those of a lower spiritual nature that are drained. Psychic vampires are often more manipulative than advanced in spiritual rank. Free association devices and imaginative techniques can be helpful, but they won't help you access ancestral or past life information. There is no universal record that you can astrally project to view into someone's time track, but people can certainly convince themselves of such things, and there are certain types of experiences that would encourage that. Part 10, Dialogue with Curtis Joseph. People need to distinguish between monotheistic, like most faiths, and monotheism. Sharing one's knowledge and understanding is seldom to lose power, but it may exclude one from being the type of priest opposed to the prophets of Yahweh. Kohen. Theft and crime is usually not a product of hardship, but a certain consciousness. Conspiracy theories are generally an enslavement that prevents focusing on the important issues. The same goes for how people let the media, professional worshippers, and overpaid politicians use whatever matters less or has no merit distract from what we can do something about or what is best for us. The movement, not sure who did that. Poppy is one of those things that makes parties annoying. 22 verses have 15 prostraces with their singing. Standing, praising, folding, bowing, prostrating, kneeling, pointing, and facing are what arises in my central devoting myself at set times. June 4. Pearls from the Quran, Ramadan Qatiras, Part 8. Qatira, again, not the right plural. The wisdom of suffering. Suffering is a personal choice. Hardship is not usually. Those who see no purpose, meaning or devotion, experience more of the displeasure and dissatisfaction of life. Hardship is a means of atonement and our merit. Striving leads to better performance when it is not difficult to. Evil and bad are not the same, and it is good Islam distinguishes them and more. Dukhanta ends spoken. I would have liked it more if the Dukhanta hierarchy was closer to some more familiar grimoire, like Grimorium Verum, instead of these uneven 9 families of 2 to 12 entities, with 39 in all. It does remind me of some system presented by Nargargole. The demonic ends may lack the association of language meanings to us, but I feel they mean something, and it'd be better that was fully accessible to those who say them. Goetic ends, night demons. Many would say the day demons are the odd number ones, and the night demons were those of even numbers, but it seems to work best that the Goetia-like rites are used in their quinary order. 1 at the vernal equinox, 19 at the summer solstice, 37 at the fall equinox, 55 at the winter solstice, 64 at the start of what used to be called spring in the northern hemisphere, 10 at the start of the bright quarter, 28 at the next cross quarter, and 46 at the start of the dark quarter in the northern hemisphere. Seeing number 73 and 1 through 36 as deacons for the day, and 37 through 73 as deacons for the night, not only does not work as well, but has not been around for most of the history of the Goetia, and seems more scholarly than devotional and experiential. Goetia ends and day demons. I've one of the things that I do in the Dhamaniakis Fama, when I have names for people, one of the things that comes through is an atbash. And the atbash of the names is A to Z, B, the alphabetical order would be Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, S, R, Q, P, O, N, M, L, K, J, I, H, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, for your typical A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. As much as I find the evening a good time to start these rituals, I think it also works well to regard the traditional hours of dawn to sunrise and the last third of the afternoon for nights between sunrise and sunset for princes, prelates in the day within the words are kept away for noise for people and people for earls, counts, the last half of the morning and the last half of the afternoon for kings, morning and clear weather for dukes, any time other than twilight for presidents, except when under their elemental king, a Maimon, Gawap, Khorasan, or Ziminar, and the last half of the afternoon till sunrise for marquises. Feeding Ahsi and worshipping Ahriman. Dokma of Engramenu certainly knows how to make an evil snake feeding video. Ahriman is the provoker and encourager of all some deem evil and low. A proxy for the devil enacts what was begun. The representation is fitting and somewhat fun for them without baking. Pearls from the Quran, Ramadan 2017, Katiras Part 9, Intoxicants, the Filth of Shaitan. There is no medicine that is, I don't know what I just did. There is no medicine that is smoked that can't be as or more effective for medical reasons when taken otherwise. That being said, intoxicants, major and minor, are not allowed except for survival purposes, in Islam. That is not because one does not like the way one feels, or that it is easier to consume caffeine and nicotine than real food that keep up physical and mental abilities without taking more away. It was universally agreed in the earlier generations that minor intoxicant teas were sin to use, sell, distribute, or otherwise involve oneself with. But the profit in social poison was too much for the weak of faith, aside from the 4 verses of prohibition that are mentioning not leading towards your own destruction. The minor intoxicants mentioned and others can lead to a variety of cancers. A lot of caffeine-based cancers, by the way. The Sudamag Bhavagatam relates the story of a very pious man until 2 women convinced him to use marijuana. Tobacco is a major intoxicant that results in more mental illness, physical illness, and crime than any illegal drug. God has allowed the way to quit them all for good if one has started using. Let's appreciate together. Ramadan is a time to build up appreciation of the material and spiritual means for our life. Okay, let me... Is Poppy in the Illuminati? That Poppy Kimdar? Well, of course it's not. I made a video at the end, anything that ended in the 1700s. And when you're not even using the Illuminati symbols, you're using like the eye and the triangle, that sort of thing, I made a video at the end of last month that should prove no one is Illuminati and such an organization that was opposed to the slavery and occult dogma people associate with such groups. Baphomets are real jinn and not just a symbol. How can I be in alignment with the divine spirit? The body is a vehicle for experience. The feelings and emotions drive the choices based on our input. The mind sees variety. The spirit sees the highest consciousness and its creation, leading the way to become our own higher self, be it through no veils or up to 70,000 veils. We should correctly act with correct beliefs until faith and knowledge are in our experience to build upon that. I'm so excited. Please watch this. Poor woman thinks ovulation is mental illness. But anyways, jet lag and clinical depression are not the same. Demonetization and making amateur or independent media is a product of government welfare for the rich and the attempt to deter what may affect certain corporate profits. The fake hair color stuff can throw people off as to things as basic as honesty. E.A. Koetting seemed to have abandoned the professional YouTube stuff in favor of more expensive rituals recorded for private viewing. Once he had the one, obviously he makes money off of YouTube, but you know what I mean. I won't be paid to pray, but I would be open to rates as cheap as yours when considering such things as prints and other items sent or given for use in the ritual or video itself. I fulfilled requests too. Of course, I've never even got money for my videos and presentations instead of making a living from YouTube at times. It's pretty close to making a living from YouTube, and then this anti-independent media package thing kicked in. What no one is saying about saving yourself for marriage. Well, you can have fun without. Anyways, living chastely is typically a series of choices, which will stop the decision to have extramarital sex of any of the 5 types. Coitus, oral, and sodomy are the types of intercourse. And, there's a couple approaches, I guess you can say, to outer course. Hand and other, right? The Bible is good enough of a system in that regard that I've never heard of someone even having consensual outer course, dry sex, without breaking other commandments along the way. Psychologists, sociologists, and medical doctors show how actual, instead of just technical chastity, is good. Well, technical virgin is what they call it. They don't call it, because obviously they're not chaste. Is good for individuals in society. People also need to realize that sin is not all or nothing. Waiting for a deeper than love at first sight is more important, but apparently focus on character and more lasting or more useful features does result in more and better sex for most. 20th century Yemeni Eid Festival March, British multiculturalism at its greatest. With Ramadan and Eid al-Fitr, we should remember that Prophet Muhammad never ate polished grains when they were available, and certain cultural things are voluntary at best, even when they are given Islamic attributes. Ekankar, a teacher, receives protection via his spiritual master. Every person has an inner and outer side. Ice and fire are things from which we hide. We are not vehicles for whatever we choose. What we don't enact is what we do lose. We are introduced between October 2nd, 2016 and October 21st, 2017. Where were we introduced between October 22nd, 2016 and October 21st, 2017 to the inner master? Do we go between hypocrisy and non-awareness towards that which makes the same outer master? Pearls from the Quran, Ramadan 2017, Qatiras, Part 10, The Wisdom of Quranic Stories. Long ways without a Nargargole video to comment on. The greatest thing about Quranic stories is that the mythology is not only useful, but it is true. Parables and stories are almost always more valuable in a non-literal sense. When I get more subscribers, these videos are going to be live, by the way. Those conveyed artistically are ever the more a means of power when prosaically sound. Rituals are meant to enact myths. Shiva, the soul of the cosmos, tantric magic. Few here know the difference between personifications of names that may not actually be limited by projections of personal limitations, like gender, and what the difference is between yoga and tantra. I mean, really, all these people talking left-hand path, left-hand path. Do you even know what the difference between yoga and tantra and left-hand path and right-hand path are? Or are you just, those are the left hand, those are the right hand? That's something different than left-hand path. The simple obeisances, chants, and rituals can result in cannabis-like highs. Like Lucifer did not come to us from Judaism or Christianity, but started to be used as an insult around the time of the post-Constantine Greek Bible. It did come from Christianity, where the use of it as an insult, or anyways. But Jesus is still regarded as Lucifer of Lucifers in the Easter Vigil. Lucifer is a demon that first appears as a serious word in Christian-based fiction. Fiction. The left-hand path is like the Illuminati goals and ideas for the most part. Tantra and yoga are not given real distinction by alleged divine names used, not left versus right-hand path thinking. Both are esoteric, and about liberation, and about self-control, self-responsibility. Responsive are dismissive to society, nourish our produce abilities, and essentially multicultural. Tantra is identification, yoga is connecting. Corn. Black is the soul, official video. Sometimes I figure my so-called entertainment videos watching is something worth sharing the comment of. Black is the month which we are in. It is a break from the demons let in. Are we remaining our own source of sin? Let go of it, and let something else begin. Pearls from the Quran, Ramadan 2017, Keturahs Part 11, commanding the good and forbidding the evil. Some see this age as doubling up on the martial, but it is the mercurial that is better to have the extra placement, because we are to be apostles of the messenger prophets of God. The direct revelation and direct divine inspiration to them is done, and it is for us in this age to have such an influence in the land. People are allowed to believe or disbelieve whatever they want, but we should set an example by word and deed in regard to what is right. Indifference may not be as bad as words supporting or promoting what is wrong, but the idea ignoring people does play a role in the evil and ignorance of others. May we go to the stations from surrender to believers to faithful to perfecting. Lower. 5 times a night and day I show I am lower. I try to do a little more and more to make sure I do a good job as a devotee. Gun control. Ultra spiritual life. 61. It is less about guns as it is the secular and selfish mindsets. A bit of drinking and mindless entertainment can get almost anyone to commit the crimes they see they can do if it overcomes religious and family values. Ekankar, Hugh, and a spiritual master help a despondent woman, or they allegedly do anyways, just as potential perks of doing business can and should be considered. It is also important as spiritual choices. Many are shy or even embarrassed about what spiritual path they are on. That should be rectified by either sharing or by authentically and personalizing one's own path. Sometimes it takes a broader, non-limiting invocation or evocation to enhance one's system of judgment without changing it. Yeah, that's a great way to program people over time. Oh, it enhances your religion. It enhances my religion? You don't have anything to offer, that I don't have. On the outer and by rank, we do not know who is and will be best on the inner planes. Psychiatric issues are often beings that we have left ourselves vulnerable. The astral, causal, mental, and etheric planes. Psychiatric issues, okay. We can project people into the structure of consciousness, or we can accept interaction with the real dream master. Real beings can take on real beings on the spiritual level. Pearls from the Quran, Ramadan 2017, Katiras, Part 12, Keeping the Hearts United. One of the three purposes of my mission in life is explained as unity. Ramadan is a time to do this on a personal and communal level. The lack of lying, even in jokes, is one of the greatest strengths of Islam. Those who work to other than just gentle interpretation have corrupted more than social function. But the understanding of the spiritual can heal these problems, among others. Generosity rather than obligation produces charity when it is needed. The N series, the scale of deeds on Judgment Day. I can't say that I have even seen the light around myself as more than a few feet around me in the dark. There are Akashic records, but they are neither the tool of professional priest, nor that of such limited a view as we can have of those things and events. I had a dream where I was weighed in my physical and spiritual components, but the spiritual substance escaped my understanding. Forced consciousness is worthless compared with chosen or bestowed consciousness. People say that Islam lacks an understanding of divine grace, but this alone proves it is greater than any other path. Our own position and what we deserve will be clear enough, but the right spirit and consciousness as our choice unto death will meet more mercy than we can truly deserve beyond our outer layer of judgment. New botanical moisturizing soaps. I don't know what value I thought was in the comment, but what does it say? I do not... a Yumi video. Okay. I do not think any... Well, that's what I'm presuming. I do not think any non-animal scents are really male or female. There are differences in herbs and stones, but I agree that most of it's psychological and even... Oh, most of it is psychological and even worshipping the herbs. Okay, I don't know who I was talking about then. An important realization of what is specifically evoked in oneself and in those around oneself. Whether aware of it or not, people typically turn to psychiatric drugs as an acceptable form of drug abuse, but sorcery is more effective than that, and counseling if one means the terms of this world. Neither intoxicants or demons are needed for the states and stations of spirituality, but they can be there among the experiences that damaging and even lethal drug combinations may do for people with those cost. Addiction remains not a valid excuse to make any mistakes along their path, but we can keep returning to our covenants. Fame is important. Be thou a flower of legacy.